Obviously, want to start by giving Nebraska credit. I think the story of the game was turnovers in the first half. That's been a similar challenge that we have had, this year. The turnovers early in games. You think about, one interception that's returned, I think, down to the 15-yard line, as well as a fumble recovery for a touchdown 2 weeks in a row. So that's been the thing that more than anything in my mind that we have got to get cleaned up and got to get that resolved, not only on offense in protecting the football, but on defense in terms of creating turnovers. I was watching last night, from early in the year. I think it was the Northwestern and Iowa game, and I think in that game, Northwestern had 3 turnovers and Iowa had 4. So I think that's the biggest story. I thought we battled like crazy in the second half. We won the second half 17-3. Defense gave up 3 points and 95 yards total in the second half. Our field goal execution was good, but obviously we need to score more touchdowns and not field goals. We got to punt the ball. We got to punt the ball better. That's something that from a field position standpoint that we haven't been able to do consistently this year, and that's going to be important, especially against this Iowa football team that's really good in the return units. So, that's kind of a quick summary of Nebraska. And then obviously the last thing on Nebraska is obviously Will Levis came in and did some good things and gave us a spark. When you get into Iowa, we've been fortunate to have some great games. Since I got here, 6 games against this program, and they've been great games, and we've been fortunate to find ways to get wins, all different types of ways to get wins. Obviously, Kirk Ferentz is the vet in the Big Ten, been the head coach at Iowa for 22 years. Obviously, they do a great job. They play hard, they play sound, they play fundamental football. Typically they've been built up front with their front 7 on defense, and their offensive line and tight ends on offense. But on that same note, I think since 2017, I think they've led the country in interceptions. So that will be a challenge for us. But I got a lot of respect for Coach Ferentz and the Iowa football program. Like I said in the beginning, we've been fortunate to have a pretty good amount of success over the last 6 years, which was probably somewhat different than how it was the few years before we got here. And obviously we got to do everything we possibly can to find a way to get a win on Saturday, which would be really important for our program, be really important for, most importantly, our players and coaches and our fans and community. So going to be a tremendous challenge, but looking forward to the opportunity. So open it up to questions.
We'll start with Mark Brennan, Fight on State. Rich Scarcelli, you're on deck.
Hey, James, thanks for taking the time today.
You too, Mark.
Hey, have you settled on a starting quarterback? If so, can you tell us who it is and how you came to the decision? And if not, can you take us through the timetable of how you'll figure that out this week?
Yeah, obviously I knew that question was coming, and I get it. We have not made that decision or announced that decision yet. Obviously, we had some conversations about it this weekend with not only the coaching staff, but also with Sean and with Will as well, based on what we're going to do in practice this week and things like that. So we'll evaluate that as the week goes on, based on what we do this week, but also what we've done this season and what we've done last year. Obviously, Will came in and did some good things and put himself in this position, and he's earned it. No different than Sean had earned the ability to be our starting quarterback last year and our starting quarterback to start the season. Will was able to come in and earn to be a part of this conversation. So but no, Mark, it's not like we have decided or made any announcements yet. And as you guys know, and I know it drives you crazy sometimes, we typically aren't going to make any announcements publicly unless it's obvious for some type of season-ending injury or things like that. We don't do. Some people don't even do depth charts now. Teams we play don't even do depth charts at all. We try to give you guys a little bit of information, but not everything all at once.
Rich Scarcella, Reading Eagle. Parth, you're on deck.
Hi, James. Thanks for your time.
You too.
James, what do you think that your defense has to do better, especially in the first half of games?
Well, I think it's a couple things, Rich. We have typically, really over 6 years, haven't always been great in opening drives. That's been a fairly consistent theme and things that we have talked about, myself and Coach Pry and the defensive staff. Obviously, people typically script. That's usually, you're going to get a scripted set of plays and formations to kind of find out what you're going to be in and are you playing how they expect. But that's something we've discussed not just for this year, but for a number of years. But typically, we've been able to settle down. I think one of the challenges is obviously we got to tackle better, and we got to be able to adjust faster. But the other thing is a lot of the turnovers, Rich, have happened in the first half. When you have 2 turnovers for touchdowns and then you have turnovers for big returns, where one goes for a touchdown and one drive starts at the 15-yard line, that's challenging as well. We gotta find a way to play better in opening drives. We gotta protect the ball on offense, and we gotta play our brand that we've been playing on defense in second halves earlier in games. But I think more than anything, it's tackling, and it's being able to adjust to all the different looks that we're getting early in games, and being able to understand there's going to be some things that show up in games that it's the first time that you're seeing it. And you have to trust your training and fall into your empty rules or fall into your unbalanced rules or whatever they are for that week, because you just can't cover everything in a week, especially in opening drives.
Parth Upadhyay, Center Daily Times. Audrey Snyder, you're on deck.
Coach, appreciate the time this afternoon. Thank you.
You too, Parth.
When we first spoke to you after the season opening game against Indiana, when Noah Cain went down, you kind of mentioned that Devin Ford would have to grow into being that guy. And there was a big difference between obviously being, a complementary piece and the lead dog. Through these last 3+ weeks since then, how have you seen Devin kind of take on that responsibility?
Yeah, I thought last week Devin and the 2 young backs, Kevon and Keziah, really did some good things. Obviously, Devin is carrying most of the load, and those other guys are able to give him a blow. And are doing some nice things as well. But yeah, I see Devin growing. I thought we ran the ball last week as good as we've run it this year, and that's a combination of the offensive line and tight ends, as well as the running backs. I know Coach Sider, when we review our notes on Sunday after we've all watched it multiple times, I know he was pleased with the running backs, not just how they ran the ball, but also how they protected. I thought they did a good job in pass protection as well. So that group is coming along, and we need them to continue to come along. This is going to be a week. It's always challenging to run the ball against Iowa. They're big and they're physical in the front 7, and you got to be able to break tackles. And again, you watch that Northwestern game, and it wasn't always pretty, but it was 3, 4 yards, 1 yard, 3 yards. 16 play drives. When you watch it, maybe it didn't feel like they were being overly successful. I think in that game, they may have only thrown it 5 times in the first half. But that's kind of how you have to be against Iowa. They're going to make you earn it. And we're going to have to be ready for a physical football game.
Audrey Snyder, The Athletic. Greg Pickle, you're on deck.
Good afternoon, James.
Hey, Audrey.
After having a chance to watch Will in that game, what are some of the things you think he did well? What are some areas you'd like to see him grow and develop in?
I think Will's got a really strong arm and can drive the ball and make defenses defend the entire 53 and a third of the field, which is helpful. His arm strength is also, I think, going to help with yards after the catch. I think that showed up on Saturday, and how this plays out could moving forward. I think one of the areas that he would admit that he needs to get a little bit better on is some of his touch. When to take a little bit of the octane off the pass and put it in a position where our guy has a chance to go up and make the play. And that's kind of all the little subtle things of playing the quarterback position. Everybody loves the big, strong arm, which he has. But it's also, knowing when to take a little something off it and throw for touch. And then I think the other thing that he did well on Saturday, obviously he's a big physical runner. We saw it last year against Ohio State. Not only is he able to make people miss, but he tends to fall forward on runs. And, a couple of the runs, even on short yardage where, he got hit, even sometimes in the backfield, was able to, carry a guy for a yard to get the first down and to keep the drive alive. So, he played hard and he played with passion and did some good things. We just got to make a few more throws and again continue to improve in some of the touch aspects of the game.
Greg Pickle, Penn Live. Elton, you're on deck.
Good afternoon, Coach. Thanks for your time.
You too, Greg.
Curious what the film told you about the way your line performed once Caden Wallace came in and Will Fry kicked in the guard, and if you saw enough from that to make that your starting group moving forward.
Yeah, again, as I won't announce starters at this time, but yeah, we thought Caden did some good things. I mean, obviously that's why we got him in there for that many reps, because he just continues to gain confidence. He is big and strong and powerful and light on his feet. I also think having Will Fries at guard, I think also helps Caden, because he's got an older, experienced guy right next to him who's played a lot of football for him. So that's been helpful, that combination. We've also been able to rotate some other guys in there, Juice Scruggs and CJ and Miranda. So I think that's been a positive for us. I could see that continue to grow, as long as he continues to develop the way we think he will.
Elton Hayes, CNHI Pennsylvania. Donnie Collins, you're on deck.
Hey, Coach. Hope you're having a good afternoon.
Hey, Elton. You too.
Coach, earlier, I think it was back in September when we spoke about the grind of playing 9 games consecutively and not having that bye week. One of the benefits you mentioned was being able to rotate some guys in without having to burn, a red shirt this season. I wanted to know, 4 games into the season, how that's benefited you so far, and what are some things that you, how have you been able to use that to your advantage?
Yeah, obviously, typically early in the season, out of conference games and things like that, you can gain experience, or you're playing well and you're able to get up by a few points and able to get some guys in the game that you want to be able to get reps. But all the games have been such battles that, it's hard to take your starters off the field and rotate some guys in. We've done that at some positions, and we've done that in some places out of necessity, whether a guy hasn't been available because of injuries or whatever it may be. But yeah, it's been a grind. There's no doubt about it. This 2020, I see things, every day. And every week, all across the NFL, all across college football. I'm looking at the records in the Big Ten. I'm looking at the top 25 rankings. I don't know if I've seen a year like this in the Big Ten, since I've been here. Obviously, specific to Penn State, specifically.
Donnie Collins, Times Tribune. Neil Rudell, you're on deck.
Hi, James. Appreciate you doing this.
You too, Donnie.
The defense only allows 6 points once after Will came in the game, and then afterwards, a couple of guys kind of talked about the spark he provided for them on that side of the ball. And I'm wondering, do you think that's a coincidence? Is that something that could be? Yeah, is that something that could be continued if he's the starter? And is there something about the way he plays that might promote the defense? Having be able to have that kind of aggressive style moving forward in games.
Yeah, I think the reality is, you'd love for the defense and the offense and special teams to go do their jobs, no matter what the circumstances may be. But the reality is, when the defense makes a play, it has an effect on the offense. When the offense makes a play, it has an effect on the defense, and special teams is the same way. So yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily something specific about Will, but he came in and did some nice things, and obviously that has an impact on our entire team. Anybody, and we've been able to do that over 6 years, is make big plays, and make big plays to swing momentum. Even sometimes when people make a big play against us, we've been able to counter with a big play as well to swing momentum and emotion on the sideline and in the stadium. So, Will did some good things on Saturday and gave us a chance to go win the game. Our defense was able to get a late turnover as well. So yeah, I think your point is a good one. And I do understand that, when the defense, plays well, it definitely has an impact on the offense and vice versa. And obviously Will was a part of that in the second half on Saturday. And, we'll see how this plays out this week and we can build on it.
Neil Rodell, Altoona Mirror, Mike Gross, you're on deck.
Hey, James.
Hey, Neil.
Wondering, uncharted territory for a lot of people. You've not been in this situation. Who do you lean on? Who coaches you, during these kind of struggles?
It's a good question, Neil. I actually almost called you this afternoon. Obviously with my family not being here and that's a good question. Neil, I have people that I call and people that reach out to me. I've had a bunch of people reach out to me, which is nice. But I'm trying to be there for the players. I'm trying to be there for the coaching staff and to help us navigate through these times that none of us have been through before, ever. And that is specific to football. But that also is, family issues. That's COVID issues. That is academic issues. That's normal growing pains of 18 to 22-year-old, young men. It's all of it, and that's my job and my responsibility as the head coach is to support everybody, and give direction and give a path and get people excited and motivated during a time when that's challenging to do. But I also try to remind myself every single day. How blessed I am and how fortunate I am. I think about, what Journey Brown has gone through this year. I think about, the fact that I got 2 healthy daughters and my wife and the staff and all those types of things. So, we are being tested right now and we are being challenged. And, we plan to answer the test and we plan to grow from this. It doesn't always feel like it at the time, Neil. And that's why I almost called you this afternoon. But, I believe good will come from this for my program, for our players, for myself. It doesn't feel it at the time. But I'm going to use this as an opportunity to get better and grow.
Mike Gross, LNP News. Joe Giuliano, you're on deck.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
You too, Mike.
Over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of analysis of kind of the mental and emotional makeup of the team from us, from the fans, even from the players. And when we've talked to them after the game, what do you think about the sort of personality of this team? Is there anything about this group? I realize I'm asking you to generalize about 100 human beings, but is there anything about this group that kind of sets them apart? What's your take on the personality of this group?
Well, I think the thing that's hard to do right now, Mike, is to separate it all. I think you got to look at all of the circumstances. You got to look at our team. You got to look at our coaching staff. You got to look at what the off season was like. You got to look at the internal challenges that we've had. You got to look at the external challenges we've had. You got to look at things specific to Pennsylvania, specific to Penn State. All of it. It all factors in. All the positive things have an impact, and all the negative things have an impact. But the reality is, it is what it is. And I know people turn on their TVs on Saturday afternoon, and they want to be able to have an escape away from their lives and enjoy Nittany line football and Penn State football. And and we have a responsibility to go out there and play well. But yeah, when you got 18 to 22-year-old men and you got 100 of them and a staff, all the things and all the challenges that I see in the NFL and that I see across college football right now. I think of all the stuff with COVID, all the changes in our program, all the things that we're doing. One of the issues that we continue to have issues with is false positives. We've had 39 false positives, where that means 39 people missing practice, and we're at I think a higher rate than anybody in the conference, and trying to find out why. Because every time we have one of those guys, they miss a practice. So I will say that again, there's a silver lining and everything, and the positive is, knock on wood, those are not positive COVID tests, which is something we've worked really hard to keep everybody as safe and healthy as we possibly can. But I guess what I'm saying, Mike, is it's just hard right now to do that, because there's just been so many things going on. I will say that from what I've seen, this team cares deeply about one another. This team battles, for 4 quarters. We showed that last week and gave ourselves a chance to win at the end. But everybody's trying to navigate this, and there's not too many of us that have been through this before, specifically at this level.
Joe Giuliano, Philadelphia Inquirer. New bias, you're on deck.
Hello, James.
Hey, Joe.
After your film study of Saturday's game, what did you feel were the biggest problems in the red zone? What would you have to do to rectify those problems? And was being a second teamer coming into the game, was Will prepared enough to handle all those red zone responsibilities?
Yeah. So good question. I think a couple things. I think, when you get into the red zone, everything is magnified. The details are all magnified because all the windows shrink. There's just less space for the defense to cover. They don't have to defend any vertical routes. It's all horizontal and high lows. So all the details get magnified down there, and precision, is critical. And I also think that's where the touch comes in. The touch comes in of, rather than driving the ball across the field, it's dropping the ball into certain zones and certain areas and things like that. So there's no doubt that we have to improve there. The days of field goals in college football, don't get me wrong, they're important, but you got to be able to score points, and you got to be able to score touchdowns if you want to win at a high level. Early on in the season, Joe, I thought it was, we weren't running the ball effectively enough. I thought we ran the ball better on Saturday, but you got to be able to do both. You got to be able to run the ball, and you got to be able to threaten people and stretch people and challenge people in red zone combinations, and then be able to touch, be able to either drive the ball or drop the ball into tight windows.
New bias, Will Warren, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. T. Frank, you're on deck.
Coach, I was going to ask you a football question, but your answer to Mike kind of made me think. How tough is it? Because you guys did play a game against Maryland. They had a little mini outbreak. Then you said you've had 39 false positives. Like, How does that affect the kid when he gets a false positive or he thinks he has it, considering everything going on and the cases going up in PA and really all across the country?
Yeah, we've had a few kids as well as staff members that have gotten false positives multiple days in a row. So it's test positive, get put in isolation, retest. The test comes back negative, later in the day, typically about halfway through practice, because the way we're set up here in State College, our retesting is about an hour and 45 minutes away. So we have to drive it an hour and 45 minutes away, get a test, wait for the test results, and then bring them back. Where obviously depending on where your school is located in the town and the city and things like that, there's just everybody's got different circumstances and challenges to deal with. But yeah, it can be an emotional roller coaster. Throughout the week, you got staff members, that are going through it, and then other guys, GAs or analysts, have to jump into that role for practice that day. I do know, talking to one of our coaches, another school that he used to work at, I think was down six coaches one day, in a practice. So again, this is what 2020 has brought us, and we got to find a way to navigate it the best we can. But it's not a level playing field across college football. It's not the same. Some places are better, some places are worse, some places have more resources, some places have more challenges. It really depends. But at the end of the day, you got to navigate it the best you can, and you got to find a way to be successful. And that's what we're battling every single day to do.
T. Frank, ESPN Radio 1450. Ben Jones, you're on deck.
Hey, James. Good to speak with you today.
You too, T. Frank.
Question about your defense. Touched on this a little bit earlier, but how would you evaluate your defense's ability to diagnose what they see post-snap? And in general, how do you coach aggressiveness without falling for offensive deception?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is a good one. We have some veteran players that have played a lot of football, and we got some guys that have not played a whole lot of football or in starting roles for the first time. And when they are seeing things for the first time, obviously you typically don't process it as fast as someone that's seen it before. Even 4 games in, we're still working through some of that. So that's part of it. And then I think the other thing you said was about possessions. You said, Chris, do you remember what?
Can you unmute?
Yeah, how do you coach aggressiveness without falling for offensive deception?
Oh, deception. That's what you said. Okay, excuse me. Yeah, I think that's the fine line, and that's where the details of the film study. That's where the details of coaching matter in terms of the angles you take. And then I also think, understanding situational football, where are those double moves going to show up? Where are those deception type plays? Where are they going to show up? And part of it is instincts of a player, of being able to tell the subtle differences between a hitch route and a double move, or an out and an out and up, because there are subtle differences. So I think typically, those come with experience. Those come with experience. So but it's all of it. It's the film study. It's the details. It's the instincts. It's situational football. It's all of it. It's also knowing your opponent and knowing the play caller. As a defensive coordinator, some of the things that you can call in those situations to reduce some of that risk based on when this coordinator typically likes to take shots. It's all those things.
Ben Jones, StateCollege.com. Peter Terpster, you're on deck.
Hey James, how's it going?
Good, Ben. You?
No complaints. How do you balance between developing into the team that you want to be and embracing the team that you might have to be this year?
Yeah. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you have to do whatever you have to do to give your team the best chance to win, and whatever that may look like. And that's based on your personnel, and that's based on the experience of your staff and their background and the things that they do well and the players do well, and playing a style of football that's going to give you the best chance to do that without becoming too conservative and without becoming too predictable. And that's the fine line. And I think that's some of what you have seen in second halves of changing our style of play to solve some of the issues that we've had in first halves. But I think to your point, we may have to go into some of the games with a similar mentality to give us the best chance to be successful.
Peter Terpstra, WTAJ. John Stroh, you're on deck.
Hey, Coach. I'm not talking about COVID positives, but what are the first steps in keeping your team positive or upbeat? Do you spend any extra time maybe on the things you guys did good on film, or just to kind of avoid the negativity of 0-4 start?
Yeah, I think you do. I think you have to balance that always. And the reality is, after wins, a lot of times you can be harder on guys, and we've talked about that, for 6 years, that even when you win, there's still things that need to get corrected and cleaned up to allow you to continue to win. And after losses, you got to make the corrections, but you got to do it in a way that young man can hear it at the time and is going to grow and not be defensive. And that's all of us. That's all of us. I think that's really important. And I'd say it's probably more challenging than it's ever been. I think social media plays a part in that. It's really hard as the head coach to insulate the players, from a lot of the noise out there. I think the other thing that's made it challenging is our playoff system. There's a mentality, in a sense. It's you're in the playoffs and playing for a national championship, or you're not. And that's changed college football dramatically over the last however many years that we went to that model. It has changed college football. So again, it is what it is. This is 2020. All these challenges, all these issues, all these changes. You got to embrace it. You got to evolve. That's us as coaches and as players. That's the administration. That's everybody. We all have to evolve with it, because college football has probably changed more in the last 10 years than probably any other point in our history.
John, HBL. Mike Hallis, you're on.
Hey, Coach, how are you?
Good, John. What I have noticed is when I talk less in the beginning, there's a lot more questions. So I probably need to talk more. No disrespect, John.
Thanks. Hey, following, just kind of playing off that last question, you're talking about the changes in the way college football has evolved. When you look at Iowa, what's it kind of say about Iowa when we're at a time in college football when everybody's embracing the spread? I mean, even Alabama has spread concepts now, and they've stayed true to what they have done throughout time with fullbacks, tight ends, running the ball, playing great defense behind it, and also too, can you break down their defense a little bit?
Yeah, what I would say to you first of all is, I think in essence, correct. They still have a fullback. They still try to run the ball and be physical, and they're built up front. But they also have a lot of spread concepts now as well. So it's not the same Iowa, really, since I've been in this conference, it's not the same Iowa that it was, 20, 30 years ago. Do they still have a fullback? Yes. Do they still, try to set everything up through the run and play a physical style of football? Yes. All those things are accurate, but they're running a lot more spread concepts. They're operating from the gun a lot more. So they've evolved, in my opinion. And then defensively, they've done a really good job. They've had such consistency on their staff, starting with the head coach all the way down. Same thing with the defensive coordinator. They do a great job of making you earn everything, play a lot of zone coverages, have a lot of eyes on the quarterback, which I think has been a big part of their ability to lead the country in interceptions, I think, since 2017. I would say that they base out of a quarters philosophy, whether it's quarters, whether it's quarter, half. On the back end, they're always one of the bigger fronts that we play. They're obviously over 300 pounds, typically a D tackle, and have length, usually 6'4" or taller. And then same thing at defensive end. They're usually 270, which are usually on the bigger side of the defensive ends that we face. And they usually have tremendous length. They're still long this year, not as long as they've been in the past, like the 6'6", 6'7" guys that they've had. They're stout and physical at the linebacker position. And they blitz enough to keep you honest and create situations where you're 5 individual blocks that all have to win, or you're going to give up pressures to the quarterbacks. But I think that's the biggest thing. They make you earn it, and they've created turnovers. And I think they can spend a lot of their time because they don't change a whole lot on defense. Now, I would say that. I would actually say where they've kept their mentality almost completely intact is on the defensive side of the ball. And what they're able to do is, this is who we are and this is what we play, and now we can spend all our time on learning what our opponent does and how they're going to try to attack us, and then the subtle tweaks that we have to emphasize that week to stop them.
Mike Callis, Cedar Rapids Gazette. Nate Bauer, you're on deck.
Good afternoon, James. You've sort of answered this question partially, at least earlier in this, but the fragility of college football programs. It's not just, in terms of wins and losses, it's not just you. It's within your division. You mentioned the rankings. You mentioned the Big Ten standings. How fragile are college football teams?
Well, I don't know about that the way you described it, but what I would say is, you have a group of programs that are battling like crazy to take that next step, and that is probably more challenging than it's ever been. And again, I think the focus and the emphasis. You look at what we've been able to do the previous 4 years, but then also you couple that with the expectations and the standards. But college football's changed. It's changed dramatically. Expectations have changed. Resources have changed. Facilities have changed. And I think, to your point, this year I think is probably magnifies it for probably reasons outside of what you're discussing. But I think a lot of it is just based on who the school is, kind of where they're at, what their history and traditions are, and how they view where they want to be. Specifically, when you talk about the college football playoffs, and how that all plays out. It's really interesting dynamic that we've created. It's made college football really exciting in the playoff, and I think this is why there's been a lot of discussions about expanding it. But it's also had a major impact on the bowls. It's had a major impact on bowls, and it's had a major impact on regular seasons.
Last two questions. Nate Bauer, Blue White Illustrated. Tyler Donahue, you're on deck.
Hey, James. How are you?
Good, Nate. How are you?
Good. I apologize. This is kind of a hypothetical, but in a non-COVID world, what would the development trajectory have been of the offensive line under Phil, just in normal circumstances, and then how did that change under current circumstances?
Yeah, so I think your point, is a good one. This would have been the year to have no coaching turnover. If you were fortunate to be one of those programs where you had little to no turnover, that is helpful. The other thing is, did you have spring ball or not? Did you have spring ball or not? That factors in. It's really interesting looking across college football, who had spring ball, who didn't, not only nationally, but also in our own conference. I think that's interesting. I think the other point that, is an important one as well, is how was the season canceled? Excuse me, how did the season kind of play out? Was it postponed and you kept practicing, or was it canceled and then restarted, and the emotional roller coaster that went with that? And did you decide to keep your players during that, or to just send them home? I remember being on a Big Ten call with a bunch of coaches and said, well, if we were going to be coming back, I wouldn't have sent my guys home, and they were all decisions that we had to work through. But yeah, I think when you have an offensive line coach, and the techniques and the fundamentals are important at every position, but probably even more so at that position. And you really have a different offensive philosophy, or a tweaked offensive philosophy, and a different tweak in offensive line philosophy. You want to get as much time, with those guys as you possibly can. But once again, it's always a fine line, because I want to answer your guys' questions, but I don't want to feel like it's coming off as an excuse, because at the end of the day, it is what it is, and we got to make the most of it. But yeah, there's no doubt you would have liked Coach Troutwine to get his hands on those guys all spring, and then in a traditional training camp would have been very valuable.
Tyler Donahue, Lions 247.
And the other thing I would say, just to add on that, is even when we did get our guys early on, we weren't allowed to be in pads, and you can only do so much at certain positions without the pads, and O-line is specifically one of those positions.
Tyler?
Afternoon, James. I'll get you out here on this one. Three Astro Fields, typically we're used to seeing him in the starting lineup. He appeared to be involved in pregame warm-up and in full uniform last week. Didn't see him on the field, though. Any kind of light you could shed on his status and why he wasn't involved in the game last Saturday?
Yeah, he was medically unavailable last week for us.
Thank you.
Yeah. And again, as you guys know, I don't get into specifics, but I also don't want you guys to think that Tariq was suspended for any reason or thing like that. But we were hoping to get a Saturday, game time decision that we may have him available, and it got close, but we weren't.